Starting Sunday, Alabama's equal pay law prohibits businesses from paying workers less than employees of another race or sex.
In 2019, Alabama became the 49th state to pass equal pay legislation, making Mississippi the only state without pay equity or sex-based employment discrimination laws. The Mississippi Legislature has two opportunities to change that, with House Bill 770 and Senate Bill 2451.
If your daughter walks through the door, gentleman from DeSoto, and you've invested all this time, in her, imagine from the time she was born, and you just looked at her and you cried, and she came home and she said, Dad, we've gone to state, we've gone to USM, and, I've got all this training, but, this person, 2 rows down the office hall for me is making this amount, and, I'm making this amount, then I can only imagine what you would feel. And so, but think about it on the flip side, when a woman is actually incurring this and going through this. That's why I said, if it's one woman, that's one too many.
Now, for many of you, you say, well, there's a federal law, and we can go, those students, if they feel like there's injustice, that they're not getting equal pay, that they can go to the federal law. One student put it very, a student actually who's paged in this chamber, put it very succinctly. She said, because it shows my state values my work as a woman. And with a state law, they're going to make sure that if I'm doing an equal job as a man, that state law is going to protect me.
However, groups like Black Women's Roundtable have criticized both bills for a lack of inclusive language for women of color and the requirement of pleading with particularity, among other problems. In this episode of MT Speaks, Mississippi Today reporter Will Stribling talks about both bills with Executive Director of Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, Cassandra Welchlin.
Well, equal pay. I know this is an issue that you've been focused on for a long time now. So what are your thoughts on the equal pay bills in both houses of the legislature?
You're right. Our organization, along with various over 50 coalition members through our Mississippi Women's Economic Security Initiative, which is where our policy and advocacy work flows from. That's one of our programs. We, for the last 7 years, I believe, have been working and advocating and organizing to get a good equal pay bill on the books. As you know, Mississippi is the only state in the country without an equal pay law. And we have tried over the years and have made significant progress. And now we are currently at the 24th hour, and we are working to try to get a good equal pay bill. Currently, you're right, there are 2 bills moving in the Mississippi Legislature: House Bill 770 and Senate Bill 2451. These are not the bills that we advocated for. We actually had another bill that was led by Sonia Williams Barnes and also Angela Turner Ford that would have done, which would have been good equal pay bills to protect women's wages. These 2 bills that we have currently are not good bills, and we are opposing both of them. Senate Bill 770, and they both do harm, actually. Senate Bill 770, it rubber stamps an employer's decision to pay women less for equal work. It leaves Black women out, and any Mississippian who chooses to use the alleged equal pay protection bill, this particular bill, will actually be left with fewer protections than what we have now. What's very concerning in 770 is that it expressly allows an employer to pay a woman less than a man doing the same job based on discriminatory reasons. So one of those reasons is salary history. So depending on what she made from her previous job, that employer, it allows the employer to rely on that salary history undermine the whole point of an equal pay law. We know that relying on salary history makes the wage gap wider. And so we cannot give an employer a defense or a reason to continue to discriminate. Another thing in this bill is that another discriminatory issue in this bill is that it has language in there that says the continuity of employment history. So what this means is that it would be okay to pay a woman less than a man doing the same job because she took time off from work to have a baby or to care for a sick family member. And so we know that this is deeply ingrained in gender, in the gender wage gap in Mississippi. We know that women, particularly women, take off work to have babies. And so an employer can say, well, I'm not going to pay you what you deserve because you took off too much time from work. So punishing her for being a woman, for having a baby, and also for being a caregiver. And we know that these kinds of policies not only impact women, but it also, policies and practices, but it also impacts Black women and brown women who we know oftentimes are in low-paying jobs and don't have the time that they need to take off work. And they also have a lot of health issues. And so these kinds of things in this particular bill is deeply concerning for us. The other thing in 770 is that a woman would have to waive her federal rights under this law. So she will have to, if she decides to file under the Mississippi law, she will have to waive her federal rights under the federal law. Well, it should be her choice where she gets to choose where she files. And so this bill is deeply concerning to us. If this bill goes into effect, it would be the first bill that gives an employer a defense to actually discriminate against her. And so it would set a precedent, and this would be really concerning, and it would help hurt, Black women and brown women significantly. This bill also does not include anything about race in here. It does not include part-time workers. Yesterday was Equal Pay Day, and the Equal Pay Day really did focus on part-time workers and seasonal workers, because we understand, being in this pandemic, it actually has caused women to have to get 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And again, who we're talking about oftentimes are Black women and brown women that's having to do this. So we're deeply concerned about this bill, and we can't put our support behind it. And then the other bill, which is Senate Bill 2451, it provides even fewer protections than what already exists under the federal law. What we're really concerned about under this bill is that it will give, it puts the burden or shifts the burden on the employee to have to prove that she has been discriminated against. Oftentimes, a woman doesn't know all the particularities, and that's what this bill does. She doesn't know oftentimes how much the other employee has gotten paid, for how long that employee has gotten paid this certain amount. That information is usually private, and oftentimes an employee is banned from discussing their pay. And so if she gets wind that she's being discriminated against, what this bill does is says that you have to actually prove every little thing, and she usually doesn't have those records. The bill is very confusing because it says plead with particularities. Mississippi is a notice pleading state. You just give notice that you're going to, file a lawsuit, right? Mm-hmm. Or bring a case. But with this bill, you have to plead. And so it's confusing for attorneys to even have to file under this law. So we're very concerned. And the thing that this bill doesn't do is the same that the House bill doesn't do. It doesn't include race. It has no provisions in there for retaliation, protecting workers from retaliation. It doesn't have any provision in there around, transparency, banning employers from preventing employees from discussing their pay. So it's very concerning to us. These are just rubber stamp bills in the name of equal pay, but there's nothing equal about these bills.
You went into a bit of what I was going to talk about in this next question, that even if we did get a strong equal pay bill on the books, so much about work culture would have to change for it to work. You talked about salary transparency is not the norm. Sharing that information between colleagues. And also in a lot of cases, where in a society where labor is so often undervalued, and especially the labor of women and people of color, don't know what they're worth, and so what they think they should be paid is often a lot lower than what that number actually is. So I'm hoping you could talk a bit about that, about how there needs to be a greater cultural shift alongside the legal landscape for any good equal pay bill to actually have an impact.
Absolutely. We have just recently heard an incredible story of a woman who actually won a lawsuit, and she actually struggled to actually win this lawsuit, and had it not been for Obama signing the Lilly Ledbetter Act into law, she actually would have lost the lawsuit. And she is in Mississippi and was one of the first, if not the first, case to be brought under that federal lawsuit, because her pay, what the Lilly Ledbetter Act does is that it says every time your pay is, there is a paycheck that has been, discriminated against, you're able to, claim that. And so she, won that lawsuit based on that. But it took and just hearing her story, it took so long, and it was grueling to really have to even find all the details of what occurred. How much did that person get paid above her? It was just really grueling. And so we've got to be able to put in, and she didn't, the resources it took to even have to pay for an attorney to bring this case forward. It was a lot, and it was excruciating to even have to put her through that. And she even lost friends. And so having to even bring a lawsuit, first of all, is very difficult, because now you're in the public eye. And then, you're having to bring additional resources to the table. And oftentimes, women don't have those additional resources to pay for an attorney. So why wouldn't employers just do what is right? And that is implementing fair pay practices inside of their company to prevent women from having to go through all of these hurdles to prove that she's being discriminated against. So an employer can just do this without even having to, push for an equal pay bill. An employer can do these things internally. They can set pay and be committed to collecting data that will show them if people are getting paid less than what they're supposed to, eliminating the requirement of basing your salary from your previous salary. Like, they can just stop doing that. They can do things inside of their company, like we said, before, around banning employees from discussing their pay. They can just eliminate that kind of practice and that kind of policy. And so there are just some things that they can just do to just make sure that they are a company that's about equity, and that they, protect their their women workers inside of there. These are things that they can just do, and they can do, an evaluation of their of the salaries inside of their workplaces. These are just simple things that they can do. If they say they care about the women workers, and we know that women work, and women are the best employees that an employer can have, because we show up on time, we're there, we're hard workers. And so they just need to do what's right, and they don't even have to have these equal pay bills, right, to do this. But we know not everyone will do it. And so we have to have some kind of coverage and some kind of protection for the employee to make sure that their wages are protected, and that, discrimination is not running rampant within a business.
Mm-hmm. And final question. So, what do you think about, the fact that it's, Mississippi is the last state to not have an equal pay bill, and now it's trying to pass one that you say actually takes us up backwards. The legislature just killed the postpartum Medicaid expansion, another bill that advocates say would help women in the state. And, and the state is flush with all this federal money, and they can't do anything but argue about trying to give a massive tax cut. So what does that say to you about the priorities of leadership in the state? And,
Yeah, what it says to me is that that the lawmakers and the leadership does not value women in the state. That's what it says to me. It also says to me that women voters need to pay attention. We know we have elections coming up this year and next year, and we need to make sure that we are electing leaders that vote our values. But what this says is that, they don't care about women in the workplace and women's lives. That's what that says to me. And it's very hypocritical as well to also, when I think about the postpartum bill dying, and then I know that they're pushing for this abortion bill, but yet you want the babies, but you don't want to, you don't care about the lives of their mothers. That is very hypocritical. In a state that says that we value life, where life begins, from birth all the way to the end of life. And so these are pocketbook issues. A woman deserves to have her pay and have it protected so that she can take care of her kitchen tables. And we need systems change, and these lawmakers have the power to change these systems to make it work for all Mississippians. You can't say that you care for all Mississippians when you have half the workforce who are women in the state of Mississippi, and you won't implement smart policies and make smart policies and laws to protect their lives and protect their pocketbooks. And so women, we are voters in this state, and we've got to elect elected officials who will vote our values, and get more women elected into office, who, again, we know when you have more women elected into offices, the way we legislate and, make policies, we think about the whole, we think about not just, our individual lives, but we think about our communities and our states and our networks. And so Mississippi lawmakers must do better and stop being hypocritical and pass smart policies that protect all Mississippians, and that's including our women, who we know are the backbone of this economy. And if we pass equal pay laws in the state, it will put $4.15 billion back into the economy. It will cut the poverty rate in half. It will cut the child poverty rate by a third. And we know that Mississippi needs that. And so value the women that are your workers in the state, and do what is right and legislate and and not be hypocritical. There's no reason that we shouldn't have Medicaid expansion for these moms, and there's no reason that we don't have a good equal pay bill on the books to ensure that women thrive and can take care of our households.
Thank you for watching this episode of MT Speaks. For more information on equal pay in Mississippi, visit MississippiToday.org.